If you didn't know before, you're going to learn today. A well-organized lie defeats a disorganized truth every time. Your girl is coming through to do what I got to do. And I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm standing tall. I'm standing strong. Hey, you know what it is. Pseudo Killas on deck. Peace, everyone. My name is Chani Kinsler, also known as CK the Poet, and this is the Death to the Pseudo series, where we will be learning about various illogical thinking a lot of misinformed, ignorant, and scientifically illiterate individuals use, like faulty generalizations, logical fallacies, also confirmation and cognitive biases. These videos are important to do because individuals are displaying a lot of faulty thinking that mislead and misinform a lot of people. In this video, we're going to talk about appeal to authority biases, why these are illogical, why people use them, exceptions to the usage, how to avoid appealing to authority, and how to combat people using appeal to authority with some examples from the Black community. There are 5 types of appeal to authority that I think we should go over though. There's legitimate appeal to authority, which is they are an expert in the subject with credible position. That's okay. Then there's appeal to unqualified authority. That means that they're not an expert in the subject or an expert with a bad position. That's not okay. Appeal to anonymous authority is claims from an expert is unknown or we can't verify their credibility. That's not okay. Then there's appeal to numbers. The numbers or number of people who agree is used as a reason to get you to agree. That's not okay. Appeal to tradition, which basically means something is deemed correct based on past or present traditions, beliefs, or old thinking. That is not okay. Before we get started though, I thought it would be important to go over some terms you might not be familiar with. We're going to start with what a claim is, which is basically something that you state or assert or say. Something is the case without providing evidence or proof, typically one that is disputed or in doubt. The claimant is a person making a claim. Anybody can make a claim. The claim doesn't have to be true, doesn't have to be anything. Anyone can make a claim. It's okay. Then there's burden of proof. When 2 parties are in a discussion and one makes a claim that the other disputes, the one who makes the claim typically has a burden of proof to justify or substantiate the claim. See, this is where you got to be careful when you make a claim, because when somebody starts asking you for proof, you might want to make sure that your claim makes sense. Then there's argument, a reason or a set of reasons given with the aim of persuading others that an action or idea is right or wrong. Proposition, a proposal or suggestion of something to be considered or adopted, which leads to a premise, a proposition one offers in support of a conclusion. Evidence, available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid. Expert, a person who has a special skill or knowledge in some particular field specializing in that topic that can be verified. So what is appeal to authority? Some things that you may hear in regards to appeal to authority, it may be called argument from authority. You may hear someone call it appeal to false authority or argument from false authority. Sometimes also called hearsay or appeal to rumor. This is a type of red herring fallacy, which is an error in logic where a proposition is or intended to be misleading in order to make irrelevant or false inferences. In the general case, any logical inference based on fake arguments intended to replace the lack of real arguments or to replace implicitly the subject of the discussion. Using an individual or group as evidence in your argument when the individual or group is not really an authority on the facts relevant to the argument. And also, the audience can also appeal to authority too, by allowing an irrelevant authority to be added as credibility to the claim being made. So yes, the listening audience can appeal to authority as well. So now we're going to move on to authority biases. Authority bias is a type of cognitive bias. It's when you place too much weight in authoritative status of an information source. Then you have name dropping. Basically listing a name or naming people you may or may not be loosely associated with in order to boost your own authority or even credibility sometimes. Then you have credentialism, a practice of validating yourself with educational institutions, organizations, and/or training in which you receive a degree or certification designed by a false authority figure. So some other examples that I kind of wanted to bring up was that some things you'll kind of hear from some people would be, oh, I was taught by place such and such authority name here. I was trained by my mentor or my teacher, so I feel like I'm an authority on this subject. Another thing that you'll hear people do is they'll say, oh, it says so in this book. It says so in this video. It says so in this meme, but they don't demonstrate how. Another thing that you'll also hear a lot of individuals say as well is, oh, well, all scientists say this, all historians say that, with no evidence to support. And the one that you'll see probably the most, honestly, is people will make it personal. They'll say my family member, my teacher, my pastor said it. And another important one as well that you'll see all the time, literally all the time, is quote mining. When an authority is selectively quoted to distort their views or misquoting someone to gain the appearance of an authority. Just to give you a quick example, you'll see people misquote very important figures like, for example, like Malcolm X. They'll quote something that he said or completely misquote or take something out of context that he said. And the person that is doing this, they know that the layperson might not have the book in which he made the quote, or they may not readily have available to them the lecture in which he made the quote. And they know that that person most likely won't go back and fact check to try to figure out what the original quote was from Malcolm X. So usually they'll just agree with them and believe what they say. And that can be a problem. So you have to be careful with quote mining. So why is this illogical? Using appeal to authority is illogical because it causes you to suspend critical thinking, so you can't analyze facts to form a judgment. It makes it so that you're not using relevant or providing support for the truth or the merit of the claim at the issue that we're talking about. And a lot of times the authority is not really an authority or an expert in the field, in the subject that we're talking about. You know, sometimes the authority, they'll be prejudiced or have conflicts of interest that occur that would prevent them from formulating sound judgments or communicating honestly. And another thing why this is illogical is the argument is relying upon testimony, not facts. And you have to remember, a testimony is not an argument and it is not a fact. So, why do people appeal to authority? A lot of times when you see someone appeal to authority, it's going to occur most frequently in the form of transferring of authority's competence in one field to another field in which the authority is not competent. Same thing as well when you see people use an unidentified authority. It's used this way so you can't determine who they are or if they're even qualified. So most people, like most lay people, will just believe what the person is saying is true because they can't identify who it was that said it, because they'll just say, oh, people say this. Another issue that you'll see in regards to people as to why they use appeal to authority is because of systemic socialization practices. It's designed to instill in people the perception that obedience to the perceived authority constitute correct behavior, also known as social norms, also known as peer pressure. So basically, at the end of the day, you can't defend your argument or claim or premise. So you'll try to save face so your incompetence doesn't show by claiming or using an authority. There are some exceptions, though, to using appeal to authority. And that was the first type of appeal to authority that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, which is appealing to a legitimate authority. So appealing to an authority is valid when the authority is actually a legitimate, debatable authority on the facts of the argument. The statements of the authority concerns their area of mastery, basically. Also, when the claimant is not the authority on the subject, but they use facts from those that are, including those that are in agreement among the majority of the experts in that area or field. Consensus. So you're probably wondering, yo, TK, how do I avoid appealing to authority? I'm just going to be honest with you. Unless you went to school for that specific field or you are an expert in that subject matter and have degrees and credentials to prove that you are, you have to appeal to authority. You have no choice but to appeal to authority. And it's okay as long as you're appealing to an illegitimate authority. But here are some examples that I have below on how you can avoid appealing to authority. The authority must have competency in the area and field, not just glamour, prestige, rank, or popularity. The authority must be interpreted correctly to ensure they're not being misquoted, misrepresented, or misunderstood. Direct evidence must be available. As Unc likely says, if you don't have it, go get that. The expert should be reasonably unbiased, not unduly influenced by other factors such as money, political considerations, race, or religious beliefs. The judgment must be representative of expert opinions on the issue as opposed to an unrepresentative sample. That's where your fringe scientists start coming in right there. And also, a technique is needed to mediate disagreements among equally qualified authorities. If scientific testing of the claim is not possible, then the majority of the expert opinions is sometimes used to develop a consensus. So now we're getting to one of the most important parts of the videos that everybody's waiting on. CK the Poet. How do I combat people that are abusing appeal to authority? And trust me, when you run into these pseudos and people that are pushing misinformation, trust me, they are going to appeal to authority. Most of the time, it is going to be a false authority. So the first thing you need to do is ask for the authority to be identified. Let's get their name, preferably their real name. Check to see if they are biased. Check to see if that authority has a conflict of interest of being dishonest. You got to check if that authority is in that field. And if they're not, you might want to check to see if they're trying to make claims that's in a field that they're not an expert in. And also, don't get intimidated when people drop really big names. People that are very popular or very well known and respected. It's okay. All you need to make sure that you remember when you're dealing with people that are using appeal to authority is name them, investigate them, and vet their claim. So there are a couple of things that I kind of want to go over before we get into the example section. So far as examples go in regards to appeal to authority in the Black community, I wanted to talk about irrelevant or illegitimate authorities. I wanted to make sure that I emphasize how important it is for you to understand the 3 different types of irrelevant or illegitimate authorities that you're going to run into when it comes to people either appealing to authority or trying to make themselves the authority. So one is they have no expertise. The authority cited is not an expert on the issue. The person who supplies the opinion is not an expert at all. Or they are an expert, but in an unrelated field or area that we're discussing right now. Then you have the bias. The authority is an expert, but is not disinterested. That is, the expert is biased towards one side of the issue, so their opinion is untrustworthy. But, we have to keep in mind, the fact that an expert is biased does not automatically mean that they are wrong. You still have to vet the evidence. Then there's unrepresentativeness. While the authority is an expert, but their opinion is unrepresentative of expert opinion on the subject. Basically, the expert takes a position that is opposite of the consensus. This is where your fringe scientists start to come in. Your pseudoscientists start to come in. But all in all, if anyone looks hard enough, it is possible for them to find an expert who supports virtually any position that one wishes to take. This is why you have to vet them. So now we're getting towards the end of this presentation, and I thought it would be very important for me to show some examples in the Black community of appeal to authority, of authority bias, and probably even some people making themselves the authority and using things like credentialism as well. But I think it's still important for me to do this full disclaimer. I am not trying to debunk, disrespect, or diminish the people that are going to be used in the examples below. At the end of the day, we have to be honest and mature in admitting when people we love and respect are wrong, and if possible, respectfully correct them and hold them to the same level of scrutiny as anyone else. With that being said, we're going to start with Sabi. This man isn't a medical or academic doctor, nor does he have the expertise to diagnose or cure anyone of anything. He claimed that he was an authority on a lot of things in regards to health, and people use him as an authority. He isn't. I'm sorry, you guys, he isn't. Then we have Elijah Muhammad. He's used as an authority, especially in this book here that I have on the screen. He actually makes himself an authority on the subject matter, but he's kind of dishonest to his readers by not demonstrating or proving his credentials in the subject matter. And as well, you probably should look at it as a red flag as to whether you want to listen to him or not, since he died at the age of 77 with heart disease and diabetes. Then we have Phil Valentine. He claims to be an authority on human health, but has no credible expertise in this field. He claims to have a doctorate in naturopathy. And if y'all are not familiar with naturopathy, look it up. Please look it up on Wikipedia. It's a pseudoscience. So if you didn't know, there are institutes all over the United States where people can get certification in sketchy degrees in pseudoscientific fields and claim to be an authority on health issues when it comes to human beings. And that's definitely a problem. Then you have Bobby Hemmett. He uses a lot of New Age ideology and conspiracy theories, and he combines it with African culture. So that may be a bit of a stretch. You might want to watch out for people like this that are combining a lot of unrelated fields into one and then putting their own spin on it and trying to prop themselves up as an expert in that particular field. Then you have Curtis Koss. Curtis Koss pushes a lot of anti-vax propaganda and misinformation in regards to viruses and human immune system. He's not an expert on the subject matter at all. So now we're finna get to the nitty gritty. Barry Fells and Leo Weiner. These two men, these two guys, they are the reason why a lot of black people think that we as a people were in America's prior to the 1400s. And a lot of respected black people in the black community use these two men as sources in their book, despite the fact that they have been discredited for their pseudo-archaeology, amongst other fringe claims that they make when it comes to the Olmecs and etc. It's a plethora list. So with that being said, we're going to get into these next four men that source those two dudes heavily in their book, or the person that they're getting their information from. They source them very heavily. And we're going to start with Ivan Van Sertima. He makes a lot of claims about Africans being in America prior to Columbus. And he gets a lot of that pseudo-archaeology and a lot of that information from Barry Fells and Leo Weiner. And of course, you have to the far right, Renoka Rashidi. This man was a student of Van Sertima. And he also claims that he has a doctorate, an honorary doctorate to be more specific, in divinity. And he makes a lot of the same claims as Van Sertima. And he makes a lot of claims as well in regards to the Olmecs and Africans teaching the Olmec stuff, but doesn't provide any evidence for his claims. Then you have next Clyde Winters. He makes a lot of claims and makes himself the authority on almost everything in all of his books. I'm telling you straight up. In almost all of his books, he makes himself the authority on almost everything that he claims. He claims to be a linguist, doesn't demonstrate where he went to school to get any type of training in linguistics. Same thing with genetics. You know, he makes a lot of fringe claims as well that aren't substantiated at all. And it's very problematic. And then of course you have David Imhotep. He makes the same claims as the other three. He's pretty much just piggybacking off of Ivan Van Sertima's work. So now, we're moving on to upper left-hand corner, Verdice Turner. She's also known as the Empress. This lady right here is the first person, or at least the oldest person that we probably can go back. She's one of the first people to make a lot of claims in regards to combining Moorish ideology with history revisionism, land claims, and Native American claims. And if we're going to be honest here, she is the person that started this whole thing that you see today with the Aboriginal community, combining Moorish ideology with Hebrew ideology with Native American claims. But she gets no credit for it. But it's all pseudoscience, trust me. Then we have Malachi York in the lower left-hand corner. This man right here claims to be a doctor, but he has no credentials in that field. He also combines multiple cults into one and makes himself the authority on almost everything he says. Then in the middle, you see Brother Polite. This guy right here, he uses a lot of teachings from Sabi and Malachi York and pushes a lot of misinformation as fact and uses himself as an authority on a lot of things. And he uses a lot of claims so far as example for him by saying that, oh, I've written 100 books, so I must be an authority on everything. And then you have Ali Muhammad. He claims to be a doctor. He isn't. He makes many false historical and medical claims, easily proven wrong. And then finally, you have Signetter TV. This is a popular YouTube channel that a lot of Black people flock to due to its popularity and how long it's been around. Many people will use this channel as an authority, and they will say things like, I love Signetter TV, I respect Signetter TV, look at how many followers he has, look at how many viewers he has. So anyone that speaks on the platform must be telling the truth or must be an authority on whatever they're speaking on. And that's just not the case. Well, we made it, y'all. Here are my sources. If you feel like some people are missing from this list, please put them in the comment section below and why they should be on this list. You never know, there might be a part 2. If you're taking it personal that you or someone you respect made it on this list, I implore you to rewatch the video again and focus on what appeal to false authority is and why it isn't okay. If you haven't noticed, you should have by now, that it gets kind of crazy when you see people appeal to authority so much, and you can see how it can get out of control, how generations later people can be appealing to a false authority and create their own, I guess you could say, fantasy. All because someone appeals to false authority. You'll have unqualified people misleading a lot of people and taking advantage of people for popularity and money. Van Sertima is probably the only one on this list, and possibly even Elijah Muhammad to a certain degree, that wasn't trying to intentionally deceive people and take advantage of them. But it's just a shame that people like Van Sertima, for example, he didn't have things like DNA, and he most likely wasn't around before the time that Barry Fells and Leo Weiner were discredited for their claims. So he didn't get a chance to make a lot of corrections in his book. I hope whether you like the video or not, that you'll come back to critical thinking and exercise mature thought. Some of the people in the Black community are just misinformed or using old, outdated information. We should honor our people and their accomplishments, but we should hold them to the same standard as anyone else and they must be called out when they propose false information. And also, we may have to correct them on their misinformation if they can't or won't. But another thing that we definitely should be doing as a people is we should be moving forward in science and history, not passing science fiction and conspiracy as fact. I just wanted to thank everyone for watching this video. Like, favorite, and subscribe. And definitely, if you think we should do a particular logical fallacy in a future video, drop it in the comment section below. Whichever one has the most likes, you'll get credit in the next video whenever we do that. And you know what it is. Death to the pseudos.